Hey, everybody, welcome to the podcast today. This is How To Tuesday, brought to you by Danco on the Tom Rowland podcast. One of my favorite fish, if you've watched Saltwater Experience for any amount of time, you've probably heard me say that the permit is my favorite fish. It definitely is my favorite fish, and I really, really do like to fish for them. A lot of people have permit as one of their lifelong fish that they would like to catch. Many people in South Florida live where there are permit, either offshore or inshore, and they are available to more people than a lot of people think. You can go to Mexico, you can go to a lot of places in the Caribbean, have permit, but the Florida Keys seems to reign supreme as it comes to guides that fish for permit regularly, and also numbers of fish, numbers of shots, size of fish, having them both inshore and offshore. Lots of great places to permit fish. I find that the Florida Keys is probably the best, but I haven't fished everywhere. I'm really excited to go fish in Mexico and would like to do that. Many people have asked me, about the rig that I use for permit fishing. And it's a very simple rig. You're using something as bait that has physical weight, so that makes the rig very simple. The bait is a live blue crab. We can get live blue crabs at bait shops. They sell them at the bait shop. You can also catch your own pretty easily. The live blue crab is the number one bait for permit. It's the number one bait for a couple of reasons. It is heavy enough that you can throw it without any other weight. It moves around a lot. It stays alive very easily. So if you buy a dozen of them today and you only use one, you can very easily, throw like a ballyhoo or a little piece of fish or something in the live well overnight. You can keep them for weeks. As long as you keep them fed, you can keep them for weeks. And they're very, very easy to keep alive. So that's a big advantage. And they also stay on the hook. They stay on the hook much better than shrimp. Permit like shrimp. Permit like crabs, permit like a whole range of things. But when it comes to something that you can actually throw to them and make a decent presentation, the live crab is supreme for that purpose. So 3-inch live crab that you get at a bait shop or you catch it yourself, number one bait. That's what you need to know. Now, here is the most important thing about permit fishing, inshore or offshore, in my opinion. When I first started permit fishing, we didn't have circle hooks and we didn't have chemically sharpened hooks. Makes me sound really old, but those are some new innovations. And they're some of the best innovations in all of fishing are chemically sharpened hooks. Now we can get chemically sharpened hooks in a wide range in basically every different style of hook that they make. And a J hook is one, a circle hook is another. So if you're unfamiliar with a circle hook, a J hook is exactly as it sounds. It looks just like a J. A circle hook, the point of the hook kind of goes back towards the shank of the hook. And if you're unfamiliar with it, you wonder how it could ever hook anything, but it is incredibly good at hooking things. You just have to learn how to set the hook. The way to set the hook is just to keep the rod tip high. When you feel something, you just slowly reel. As you get more and more pressure on it, the hook goes into the side of the fish's mouth and goes all the way through the side of the fish's mouth often. So when I moved from a J hook to a circle hook, the number of fish went way, way up. So far up, it was 100% better. It was so much better that I have never gone back. I will use a jig and a J hook, or I'll use a J hook if I have to. But the number one thing, if you are having trouble catching permit, use a circle hook. Okay. That circle hook should be tied onto the leader, and the leader should be 25 or 30 pound fluorocarbon. I like Daiwa J Fluoro, and I will tend to go with 30 pound over 25 pound, but you can totally land them on 20 and even less. But I like 30. That's what I generally use. I don't get many refusals on a live crab with 30 pound fluorocarbon. I do not use a long piece of fluorocarbon. I want the amount of fluorocarbon that makes for a perfect overhang on the spinning rod. So the amount of line that I have outside of the rod tip is the length of fluorocarbon that I pick. I would prefer, even if it's an FG knot, I would prefer that the knot did not go in and out of the rod guide. So that leaves me with about 1.5 feet, 2 feet at the absolute maximum of leader length. So a lot of people would say that's a very short leader, but I can assure you that it does not hamper your hookup percentage. If I was getting turned down by the fish, I would immediately change. I'm getting almost no turn downs, no rejections when the bait is presented properly. So I'm tying a clinch knot with the 30-pound fluorocarbon onto the circle hook. And this is important because I have found that a circle hook performs better with a permit, not necessarily with all fish, but with a permit. The structure of their mouth, the way the hook grabs, the whole works. Maybe it's the live crab. I find that it is much better if the knot to the hook is tight to the hook rather than a loop knot. You can leave a loop knot with a uni knot. You can tie a non-slip mono loop. There's many knots that you can tie that we go over on the podcast. Personally, I think that the hook is swinging, and for whatever reason, I have missed some fish with a loop knot adjusted to a knot that goes tight down to the hook, and the percentage went way up. So I've stayed with that. That's my personal opinion, that it should go tight. Other people use a loop knot. I like the tight to it. And so I will generally, because I'm tying with 30-pound fluorocarbon, I'm not worried about the strength of that knot because I know that the strength of that knot is still going to be stronger than the line that I'm using. So I tend to go with a clinch knot or an improved clinch knot. A uni knot is a stronger knot, but it chews up more of the leader while I am tying that knot. So it makes my leader shorter every time I retie. A clinch knot, I can tie with just a few turns, 5 turns, and back through the hole, pull it, and I didn't reduce the length of my leader if I have to retie. So that's kind of the reason why I'm going with an improved clinch knot. I've never had one of those slip on 30-pound fluorocarbon. I'm going to take that leader length and I'm going to tie it to my line. And my line is always going to be braided line. I haven't fished for permit with monofilament in so long, since the advent of braid, basically, because it made it so much better. The stretch in monofilament makes you lose a lot of permit, and the distance that you can cast with braid is so far superior to monofilament, it made me never use it again. So I use 15-pound Daiwa J braid, and I tie that onto the leader, as I described it, with a double uni knot. Double uni knot is not the strongest knot, but it is a very fast knot. Occasionally, I will use an FG knot there as the strongest knot, but I don't break really any permit off with a double uni. So that's kind of what I've stuck with, is the double uni for this purpose. So now we have the whole outside rig, the bait, the hook, the clinch knot, the leader, the double uni knot, and now we're at the braid. 15-pound Daiwa J braid. That makes for maximum casting, and I think it's the perfect weight so that I can cast the furthest, but also have plenty of power. With 15-pound braid, you can land virtually anything. If you are careful and you know what you're doing, you can really land a big fish on 15-pound. 20-pound is also something that you could consider if you do not have to cast as far and you want a little extra strength there, go to 20-pound. But if you're concerned about how far you can cast, or the crabs that are at the bait shop or the crabs that are available, the ones that you're catching are rather small, go to 15-pound. You'll be able to throw it about 10 to 20 feet further than if you have 20-pound. So now we're talking about the rod. The rod that I like is a 7-foot. I do not like 7.5-foot rods for this purpose. I like a 7-foot, 8 to 17-pound saltwater inshore rod. This is a great rod. It's a great action. It has a soft enough tip that I can throw this crab very accurately. And then it has enough backbone that I can land even the biggest of permit around mangroves, around anything. If I'm offshore, I can do the same thing. I can lift a permit up with an 8 to 17 pound rod. I find a 6 to 12 is too light. A 10 to 20 gives you a little extra power, but it's not as accurate a casting tool as an 8 to 17, in my opinion. Usually the tip will get a little stiffer, and I'm not able to make the crab land exactly where I want to. That's why I have narrowed it down to this 8 to 17 pound, 7-foot rod. That is the most accurate rod for me. Now, in the summertime, if I have to cast a really, really long way, when it's flat calm, that's when the permit will be the spookiest. And I will change my outfit there. I'll go to an 8-foot rod rather than a 7-foot rod, and I'll go to 8-pound braid instead of 15-pound braid. That will probably give me about 30 to 35 feet more distance with the same crab weight. So now we have our 7-foot, for general purpose, 7-foot, 8 to 17 pound rod. And I'm going to pair this with a reel. And the reel that I'm going to choose needs to have about 250 yard capacity of 15-pound braid. Now, as the reel technology has gotten better, the reels have gotten smaller and more compact. I used to say a 4,000 or 5,000 reel, but now as technology has changed, I prefer a 3,000 Daiwa BGMQ that has a 250 yard capacity with 15-pound braid. And it is the perfect reel for permit fishing inshore. So to go over it again, live blue crab 3 inches across. We're going to use a 4/0 circle hook. We're going to tie that on with a clinch knot. We're going to then have 30-pound leader tied to the braid with a double uni knot. The braid that we're using is 15-pound Daiwa J braid. That's going to go on a rod, which is a 7-foot, 8 to 17-pound inshore rod. And the reel is going to be a Daiwa BGMQ 3000. That is the perfect permit rod reel combination. If you have one of those, or if you're having trouble with permit fishing, maybe it's any one of these little steps is different from what you're trying. Maybe it's the hook, maybe it's the line, maybe it's the rod. Try to adjust your setup, and if it is successful for you, and if you do catch one, I would love to know about it. You can text me at 305-930-7346. You can get directly to me, or even better, go to Tom Rowland Podcast or tag Tom Rowland Podcast on Instagram, and I will repost your permit on the story. I promise you I will. All right, that's it for today. I hope that helps you. That's How To Tuesday, brought to you by Danco. Go out and catch a permit. It's the third leg of the Grand Slam and my favorite fish of all. See ya.